You're now joining the conference.
In its own traffic class, and we are policing that during weekday hours and on Saturday mornings. So, so yes, I agree.
So let me ask this question then: is this something you guys are implementing, or something you're trying to sell M&T Bank? Because I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Yeah, so let me
to finish my
okay. Cliff, let me just speak for a second. Yeah. So this is Chris Freeman.
Of course.
I'm the project manager for the Windows 10 business line conversion, and that's going to contain deployment for all things needing to go to production on our Win 10 program. Mike Cap is the product manager for this work stream, and I'm the project manager for the work stream. So we're looking at 1E, and we're looking at their deployment tool, which has hooks into Jerome, which is going to be our data warehouse management tool for identifying scheduling for this thing. You know, who's ready, the candidacy list,
right,
which is actually is owned by Scott Green. But what we're looking at is that they actually have this tool through these guys that has ties to both SCCM and it has hooks to Jerome. So the hope is, and what they're saying is, they could reduce deployment points by some factor for us, increase the speed with which deployment happens, and it has the hooks into Jerome, so we could actually, hopefully, take the data directly out of Jerome from a scheduling standpoint, and once we could agree within the tool and its dashboard, we could actually do deployments to production from there. So that's the hope. Okay. We're hoping these guys can explain it in such a way that we get you excited as well. And then they did do this proof of concept, but you know, we're going to go from there. But I wanted, because of the pushes that we're going to have to do for Office Win 10 and Office 365, those are big pushes. And because of the network relationship, I wanted you to be involved.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and I'm sure Mike and Bob do too, because you know we had to deal with this through the whole Win 7 deployment.
Oh yeah, so that's the background I can prove.
So I think we are interested in this product. Then I wasn't quite sure what the status of the product was, and you know, definitely if there needs to be some additional proof of concepts to prove out, you know, whether or not it does what it's advertised to do from the standpoint of bandwidth utilization.
Sure.
You know, definitely, I think that Mike's set up to test that with you guys, right, Mike?
Yeah, I definitely can. We have it in the labs and everything. So I guess I am a little confused yet what the product is actually doing.
Sure. So that is what we're in the next, hopefully within the hour, but more specifically in the first half hour. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to present to you from especially for the network group, and understanding how we efficiently use the bandwidth through our peer-to-peer sharing, and our peer-to-peer technology, I should say, and our reverse QoS technology. How that'll actually always ensure that what you're currently doing today with QoS, and which is common across most organizations that are trying to deal with the beast of config manager and delivering content. I'm providing that understanding. So that's really what my focus is. I'm going to not only present some things, but also go into a demo so that you get the full understanding of what we do, how we do it, and just like you're asking questions right now, if we continue to do those, that'll be very important, because I want at the end of this conversation for you guys to be very comfortable and understanding of exactly what we do and how we provide value, to your organization.
Yep. Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Cool. So with that, I'm going to get started, guys. So if I got this correct, from the network group, I guess we have just so I know names. I think it's Robert and Michael. You're both from the network group.
That's correct.
We both work for Steve. I do the wide area network, and Mike is the performance management, so QoS policies and everything else to clean them up, what my guys make a mess out of.
Yep.
WAN, got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So let's get started, because I know we got 45 minutes, so I want to be conscious of everyone's time, and I want to make sure this is fruitful. So I'm going to skip over who we are and what we do, but just real quick, understanding the financial services, as you can see here, all the major financial services organizations utilize our solution. As Cliff mentioned, what we've helped them to do, as you know, like Wells Fargo, 385,000 endpoints. They run their entire CM infrastructure right now on 12 servers. Once again, they were able to reduce their distribution points as well as reduce their footprint down, and once again be able to continuously offer the ability to deliver software, 24/7 without never impacting the network in a negative fashion. I mean, overall, all-encompassing. I kind of just took this off we're talking about Windows 10, right? And that's really kind of what's driving a lot of these conversations today. We all know that we have basically less than 2 years to get from Windows 7 to Windows 10 so that no one has to pay the extended support over to Microsoft when Windows 7 goes out of support in 22 months. So how do we get there? There's two ways to do it. You can either hire a lot of people, throw a lot of money at it, or you can automate. And our premise is really around automation, and that's what we've helped all of our customers to be able to do. Within our Windows Servicing Suite, and I'm going to first speak mostly around the bandwidth management for the sake of the individuals on the call today. Really what that does and what that offers you and the advantages it provides to you is, once again, reducing that physical infrastructure of traditional config manager of frameworks. In other words, reducing those distribution points down by 95%. Which we have successfully done, as Cliff mentioned before, the 7,400 down to 30. I mentioned the Wells Fargo, they're running off of 12, things of that nature. How we're able to do that is because within our technology, we're only transmitting that content across the wide area network from the distribution point to the site location one time. And then from there, it's actually sharing that content very securely and very efficiently to the various peer machines that require that content. The net effect of that is, once again, we're only using the wide area network and the actual physical network when extremely necessary. And when we do utilize that, we always concede to any other traffic that is on the network. So what will happen is we send packets out on the network. Right now it's like a 32K block that is sent, and we understand the network throughput not only from the endpoint to the switch, but actually throughout the entire entire transit from the physical endpoint across the wide area network to, let's say, that distribution point that's in your data center. Now, the reason why currently today you are having to do the things you have to do with QoS, and the reason why it's always config manager or SCCM that is the bane of your network problem, is because native config manager runs on bits. And the way that bits understands available network is bandwidth is via the endpoint to the switch in the closet. And we all know, especially on the network side, that's never the entire route to get back to a server in your data center. So that's why native bits always will saturate a network link. Our technology, like I said, we're looking at that entire that entire transit, always understanding what we put packets out there. In other words, we ask for content in a 32K block. That content comes down. As we add a couple of packets, we look at the time, and I'm making this very simplified, but there's a statistical algorithm that determines the time it takes for that transit, and we know that the packets have slowed down, then we actually add more delay to the request of the next few packets. So in essence, that's how we throttle down immediately, and then as we see more bandwidth available, we actually then ramp up slowly. The net effect of that is that Nomad by nature will only use a percentage of remaining available bandwidth. So we never use all the available bandwidth. It's only a percentage of what's remaining. That's how we never saturate network links.
Yeah. Okay. How do you know what's remaining?
So what we basically do, you'll hear things like within Nomad itself. It says we take a percentage. When we say that percentage, part of that statistic is like 8. You'll see 80% of available remaining. So we actually automatically say we're going to calculate down to only use if we see let's say a gig available. We're only going to take 80% of that that's available.
So that's all. Do we have to manually go in and say what?
No, that's a great point. You don't manually. That's dynamic, and that actually happens throughout the entire communication. So there's no administration on your part to be able to manage that. That dynamically happens, and I'll show that in the demonstration how that whole process works.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that we do. So once again, as first mentioned, reduce the infrastructure, only send content across the wide area network one time to a subnet, and then from there, what happens is let's say we have 20 machines on a subnet that is required to get content. We'll call the Office 365 package was about a gig. So you have those machines. The first thing that, as those 10 clients get the policy saying they need to get this software, the first thing that happens amongst all those clients is a dynamic election. And in that dynamic election, we're determining which is the most suitable machine out of that group to be what we call the master, to go and pull the content or request that content from the distribution point across the wide area network. Okay? So we reduce the single point of failure in the sense that election is dynamic, so you don't have to designate a specific machine to be that master. And secondarily, if that machine that is now the master that's downloading that content, if he loses communication or let's say they shut it off because of the laptop, there's a dynamic re-election where the other machines pick up where they left off. The native bits that happens out of Config Manager natively, when bits gets interrupted of a transfer while it's in the middle of a transfer, let's say it gets 50% of the content and that link drops or the machine gets shut down, it starts over from 0 again. We continue on where we left off. So that's another advantage where we actually efficiently use the network because we're not going to start that communication over again. We're going to continue where we left off. Also, when that machine that's a master, and I have a graphic that's going to show it because I believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. When that master is downloading that content, at that same time, he's sharing that content with those 6 other machines that have requested to get that same content. So instead of in normal bits, you have those 10 machines going to the distribution point, whether it be local or across the network in your data center. In our scenario, you only have one machine go across, and then he's going to share it on the local area network speed, which we all know is faster than the wide area network speed. Thus, once again, protecting the network. Okay? So, additional to that, we provide the ability when you need to do a transfer of user data, what we call when a machine gets migrated, there's that user personality, all their files and all their settings. In a normal config manager infrastructure, you have to have what we call a state migration point server or a server role to be able to house that data. That we've incorporated that technology into our client. So now that sharing, that holding of the user data is on peer machines, and that's done in an encrypted manner, once again, bandwidth efficient, and it also has a cleanup as that machine builds. It also removes itself off of when the machine is fully built. That's another efficiency that's provided. Another thing that is particular to the network group is when your desktop team and your server team needs to do bare metal builds, they probably come to you guys to set up Pixie service points, and you have to do either DHCP helpers or you're doing some DHCP scope where you're adding some options into the DHCP so that it can have a machine that's going to understand this DHCP request or this Pixie request and be able to serve that. We take that technology away from having to do that on the network, so you guys don't have to get involved in any of those IP helpers or any of those DHCP scope changes, and now that's also done within our client agent peer-to-peer scenario. So those efficiencies allow organizations, once again, to accelerate their deployments as well as their patch execution, because there's less infrastructure for them to manage, less infrastructure for them to replicate, and now they don't have to worry about being QoS, that they only could deliver packages or deliver their service to the business at, let's say, at nighttime when the network is less busy. Because as you guys will see in this technology, it's efficient enough that you don't have to put QoS on it any longer. You'll automatically know that it's never going to saturate the link, and then the business can continue to move on, and the system management team can continue to do the functions that they need to do. All right, so I know I said a lot. Like I said before, let's keep this interactive. If anything I say is not clear, please stop me. This is just how we enhance Config Manager. I talk about the bandwidth management through the thing we call reverse QoS, and that's really understanding the network throughput end to end and being able to throttle up and throttle down dynamically. I mentioned about the dynamic election between peers and peers, understanding which machine is the most efficient and the most suitable machine to request that content. Another thing to mention, as I mentioned, I said we use a pull technology as opposed to a push technology. Some of the other things in the industry like to use push technology, but don't probably push technology. You need to understand the entire network before you can actually push things. Our flexibility is such that, you know, you hear people say, I have to do my boundary management to understand where content is coming from, as well as what sites I'm located, or what sites I'm required to know about. A lot of times you have floating machines where a user may be in Buffalo, but they travel, let's say, to a site in California. Our solution doesn't need to understand the network. So when that machine comes on in California, he's requested to get content, he's not going to go back to Buffalo. He's actually going to ask right on that local subnet he's sitting on, does anybody have the content I need? If no one has the content that he needs, then he's going to use that reverse QoS, only using available bandwidth, and he's going to go get that content from the nearest distribution point to his location. So these are all the underlying technology and efficiencies that we provide that actually, once again, you know, as I mentioned before, helps on your side, from the network side, of really understanding that it's no longer going to be the system management traffic that's actually bogging you guys down. So what we call this, with using Nomad and part of the Windows Servicing Suite, we call it the Nomad effect. This was one of our customers, actually, was Becton Dickinson, who actually, when they were, before they were using our solution, being in fact they're a global organization, they had about 98 distribution points, about 76 different sites. And when they implemented our solution, as another example, they were able to go down to 6 distribution points. And the other net effect of that, because they reduced the bloating of their infrastructure, they increased their patch SLAs from high 70% within 48 hours to the high 90% within 48 hours. So I mentioned that did I hear a question or a thought? Okay. I mentioned before, this is an illustration of that conversation I just had. In terms of, this is your data center where you have your config manager sitting in your data center. And let's say this is a remote site location, and this is a subnet with 5 machines, right? But you say, I want to now push out Visio in this illustration to those 5 machines. They talk to the config manager server like normal, and they say, okay, I got a new policy. The policy is that you need to install Visio. The first thing that happened, I mentioned before, there's a dynamic election between these machines to find out which is the most suitable machine. And we look at things like computer uptime. If a machine already has any part of that content already in his cache, then he actually will win that election. We look at the CPU and the disk, because as we mentioned, our number one premise that we're built on is never impact the user, never impact the business, and never impact the network. So we're going to look at the CPU and the disk. We're going to look at whether it's a desktop or a laptop that is on Wi-Fi or a laptop that is actually wired in. And there's all weighting that determines who wins the election based on all these criteria. Once we have a master, that master is now going to pull the content over the wide area network, and it's going to use that reverse QoS. At the same time as he's pulling that content, he's sharing it with those other machines. from the content that he has in his cache. And there's some hash checking and a manifest file, so we always ensure that there's no man-in-the-middle attack. So people sometimes ask about security. It's written so that the content in the communication is going to be secure. If that machine goes offline, like I said, we automatically have a re-election. Another master is selected, and we pick up that right where we left off. We don't start that communication over again. If we're at 50%, we pick up at 51%, and then once again, it continues to share on with these other machines. And when that other machine comes back online, it then will once again say, hey, does anybody have this content? And he'll pull it from one of these other machines and never go across the wide area network to the distribution point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is like that. It makes sense, but doesn't that impact the Nomad master while it's distributing the software?
No, it does not, because the agent, once again, as I mentioned, the way it's written is written very streamlined in C++, and you'll see that when a machine is actually a master and he's getting that information down and sharing with other peers, that transfer, first of all, is HTTP, HTTPS. So its impact is very negligible. Actually, you'll see that it may go up to maybe a 10% in terms of maybe at the most CPU usage, but it's very minimal. And in effect, if that user that is that master, let's take for instance, if it's a machine, I actually go into something like Photoshop that's very disk intensive. My machine is no longer the most suitable machine, right? Because I told you earlier, I mentioned that we check the disk and CPU. So what happens, there's always every 5 minutes there's a re-election. And there's a couple of reasons why we have a re-election. First of all, if this machine is no longer the most suitable machine at the time of the re-election, then he says, I'm no longer the most suitable machine, I'm busy now, and another machine now will actually become the master and carry the main load and then share with other machines. Secondarily, another machine may have come on the network that has more of the content. And if that be the case, we want to always make sure that we're efficiently using this connection over here to the wide area network. So as I mentioned before, we've proven this out through testing, the impact to the machine that is the master during that communication is minimal.
Okay.
Other questions? I know there's a barrage of a couple of questions at the same time, so I think somebody else had a question.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is actually going to help us because, you know, in today's world, a lot of the things that affect us is, you know, especially like roamers, you know, they have laptops and such. You know, they're out of the office, they go in the office, turn it on, and guess what? You get an update, and then we have a problem. So if that all stays local, you know, as long as we have one good machine, it shouldn't matter what time of day they turn that on. So I think this is a good feature.
So let's take a look. And there's also, before I jump over to the demo and actually show this live, there's also another feature that's added in that's actually native now is what we call fan out. So when I showed you this here, natively one machine shares with 6 machines, and we've actually, since it's been around for many years, we used to do an SMB file. It used to be an SMB copy. And now we actually got more efficient because security, so we do HTTP, HTTPS, but we stay with the 6 machines because we found that to be a nice sweet spot where it's not a heavy impact to that master where other machines are copying. But we will also have is a feature that's called fan out. And I always like to say that if you remember that old commercial, I think it was one Head and Shoulder commercial that said, I tell 2 friends and then so on and so on. Well, kind of fan out like that, it's a one to many. So you still have the reverse QoS, one machine per that subnet that's actually going to go and request that content. He's going to share out with 6 machines. Those 6 are sharing out with 6 additional machines, and those 6 additional machines are sharing out with 6 other machines. So what you get is a 3x acceleration of deployment of that content. So if you're deploying something to an entire site, it's still only coming across the network one time. Oh, sorry about that. Coming across the network one time, but yet it's being proliferated through this serial with these six serial, 6 additional, and then once again to 6 additional. So we call that an acceleration of that deployment. That's where we're able to help organizations increase their patch 0-day, like one of their patch cycles, because it's not, once again, a one-to-one to the distribution point. It's now one download to many machines. And I should also mention that wake up is also included in there. So the ability to wake up machines, like when you're sending out a deployment, if a machine is powered off, our wake up technology will wake up that machine without needing to broadcast that magic packet. It's also done through our agent technology. That machine is also turned on. It receives its necessary deployment, and then it can be returned back to that low power state that was in prior to that deployment. So gives you the ability, once again, to reach some of the machines that are powered off that during your normal patch cycles, you guys will miss those, and they will not get their patches until, let's say, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning when they power their machines on. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show this. I'm actually going to show what I just told you guys about. You know, I'm going to show it to you live. So what I have here is what we call a Nomad branch GUI, which kind of just graphically shows the communication that's happening when Nomad downloads content.
Hey, this is Steve from the network team. Could I interrupt you for 1 second here?
You sure can.
So, actually, I have another gentleman that wanted to watch this demo. Could you give me 2 minutes for him to get on?
Yeah, we sure can.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me just jabber in.
Yep, and while we're waiting for him, I do have a question on this, because I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I think this will definitely reduce the amount of traffic going over the wide area network. But just thinking about this, if we put these servers online, and if we do not mark these servers differently like we do today, right? If we don't classify them differently with DSCP values, by default, they're going to be mixed in with all of our production traffic, right? And I guess my only concern is, if these start ramping up and that traffic is all marked the same coming over that wire, right? A lot of our sites are T1, right? So even if you ramp up 80% on T1, you're still looking, a little over a meg, right?
Right.
And I guess I'm kind of concerned about how the buffers would react to that, right? Because you have prod traffic plus you have this update traffic, and it's all in the same queue, if you will. So I just wonder if that would show up as latency to our apps if that was the case.
So what I'm going to try to open up a doc to help me explain that. But basically, what the technology, our technology automatically does, anything it sees on the network that's not system managed traffic, we always concede to. So we'll automatically throttle down. So we're never, if it's a Skype call that comes on, if it's a file copy, we immediately ramp down.
Yeah.
So I actually had, let me see if I can pull it up real quick on my machine, on a presentation that we had a network team send this over with one of our customers who, when they did a POC,
I just want to remind Steve that we were recording this anyway, in case he can't find his resource. We'll have the recording to share with anybody that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Now the resource is joined. We're good.
Let me see if I might be an older one. Oh man, I thought, yeah, I was going to. I had a great diagram that showed this content transfer before using Nomad, and then using Nomad, and it showed the network graph, but they did it Wireshark, or they put a sniffer on the line just to show you the net effect. But I guess the best way to say it without finding this particular presentation of the graph is the fact that we're very network aware, and it dynamically ramps up and down. And the best way to do this is what we've done with organizations. The same thing, we come into your location, you guys either by a lab or a low bandwidth site, and you put a sniffer on it, and we actually, download some content without it, and then download some content with it, so you can actually, by looking at your own sniffing and your graphs of that traffic, understand that how it's never impacting your network negatively, and even whether it be during the day or whenever other things are running on the network, you'll see it immediately drop down. And, it just does not impact you guys. And that's why I think it's important. We always tell companies to get the network team involved early because, it's important for you guys to understand the technology and see it, and actually see it and actually realize that it's going to help you save with a lot of the pain that Config Manager causes you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make another point so Francisco joined. Francisco is also in the network team. Another point which I think is very important that you made early in the call is that if this product was deployed, it would greatly reduce the number of SCCM servers that are required to be deployed, correct?
Yes, and we've seen on average about 95% reduction in distribution points.
Because this is one of the things we're struggling with the number of distribution points on SCCM and some of the things we need to do to control traffic, and not only traffic but authentication to the network. So I just wanted Francisco to sit here and kind of be a fly on the wall and listen to this. So thank you.
Sure.
Jerome, this is Chris Freeman. So if you find that slide that you're talking about and it's of interest, why don't you just append it to the deck before you send it out to this distribution?
That'd be great. Yeah, because I don't want to waste time with that one also. I agree with you on that. Yeah, I'll just append it in and not waste any more time. I want to be conscious of everybody's time on a Friday. So let me pop back over to my machine. So I have here a couple machines in my network. Let's see. Let's go to PC001. I have PC002, and they're on the same subnet, right, in my lab. PC003 is on a different subnet, I think, so, and PC004 is on a different subnet. But specifically, if I go in here, and what I've done just for demo purposes, normally you can make these things, you can make CM deployments required so they automatically happen, but I'm actually going to request this at this time. So I'm going to look at, I have a test, some software I want to install. It's a 1 gig package that I need to download. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to PC002 and I'm going to set that one up also over here so I can get ready to pull the trigger. So the first thing, when I talk about that dynamic election, and there's log files that record every step of the way and everything that's happening, but this GUI kind of gives us a nice, pretty way to look at this. When I say I need to install this package, and now it's looking to download, you see how a Nomad branch actually comes into effect. What it's going to do, there's an election happening right now where that election says it already happened, where it's now saying, does anybody have this content? I'm going to pause this job. The first thing, it says, does anybody have the content? If no one has the content, then this machine says that I'm the most suitable machine, and then did I kill it? That he actually now becomes the master and starts to download that content. I think I just hit the wrong button, so let's go over this one. So I'll just click over here. Now I won't stop it this time, I'll let it happen. So we can see here, I'm actually now saying, so initially, because it says HTTP from remote, so he's getting HTTP from remote being the distribution point. You can see here the link speed, he's constantly looking at the link speed, and it'll see it's throttling up and down as it's downloading content. Now if I pop back over to PC001, as I did crash that. So I say install this, I'll reinstall it. You'll see PC001 when he starts. He's now going to do that election, and because he says is there a master, see PC002 is automatically getting that, so he's getting it. He's going to get that from PC002. You notice that he's getting it from his peer. He's not going across to the distribution point, whereas on PC002, he's getting it from the distribution point. And you can see the trap bandwidth. The link is actually always dynamically looking at it, and it's dynamically going up and down because as it's sampling the network bandwidth, it's saying I need to ramp up, I need to slow down based on any traffic that's happening on the network. Now the same thing you see here that he's getting it from PC002. The resilience is I go to PC002 and I actually go to power this guy off. If I can shut them down fast enough. What you'll see here I'll slow this guy down, add some more delay to it. What'll happen, he'll lose communication with PC001, and you'll see it go to a question mark that there's no master. Now he's going to do another re-election saying, is there anyone on the network who has this content? Once again, there's another re-election. And what should happen after this machine cycles out that there's no master and that he realizes that the master didn't come back on, he's now going to continue on connecting to the you'll see it say HTTP from remote being the distribution point. Here we go. And he did not start that transmission over again. You see, he's picking up directly where he left off. If normal bits that you have in your config manager natively, that would start over from 0. It would have lost that communication. It would have started back from 0. As you see here, he continued directly where he left off. That's the resilience. We're removing that single point of failure across your entire network.
It's a nice feature.
Okay. And that's just really quick. And there's another foundationally, that's how Nomad works. And as I mentioned before, with a couple of slides, I talked about that resiliency, that peer-to-peer sharing, that reverse QoS, that dynamic election. You guys just kind of saw that live across 2 machines, and I can show it more, but that's how that's going to happen across your entire network.
So on the network, does it use a specific port that we can monitor and control, TCP or UDP port?
Yeah, so if you saw that, 1779.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Yep. So at the foundation, and there's another component that actually expands this a little further, which is called single site download. Now, what single site download allows you to do is just what it's mentioned. It gives you the ability to set up across. Let's say you have a site location that has multiple subnets. You can group those logically into what we call a site. So I could call, let's say, my New York building that has 4 subnets. I'm going to call it one site. So what will basically happen, in essence, with single site download, is that you get one download for the entire site. So it traverses over subnets. So in that respect, when I'm looking for content, if I can't find that content on my same subnet, I ask in that that logical site location, does anyone in my multiple subnets have this content, and I actually can get it from another machine. Now, as I mentioned before, PC003 is on a different subnet, and if I look for that same job to actually install, what will happen, he'll check in. We have this what we call an active efficiency server, and basically that active efficiency server has, when a machine gets content, it registers the content that it has. And that's why now you see it says it has a fully qualified domain name, because he's actually now talking to active efficiency server that says, oh, the content's on that other subnet, which is where PC001 lives. And now you can see here that he's getting across a different subnet from a peer machine. So this is how you can, once again, take that bandwidth efficiency one step further and now only have one download per entire site location. And you see here it's coming across HTTPS from its peer. And the same resiliency happens there. Now I think if I add in some network load, sometimes let me try to add in some loads so I can actually show the bandwidth, how it's going to throttle down. Sometimes it's faster than I like it to be. So I have to slow down my transmission, CM001. Let's say on the E drive, I want to copy. I'm just trying to find a large file. I may not have a large file. Sources, driver packages. I'm just going to try to grab something real quick. Do I have it? Let's say. Let me just try to grab this file. Oh, it already beat me. God, it went download already. All right, let me try to find another. I'm going to show you when I actually went to go download a file. You'll see that link speed drop down. Let me try to pull another file just so you guys can see that happen. This is this is about a 400 meg file, so I'll grab that one. yeah, so let this one come up. All right. Okay. So you'll see, like I said, I told you that it's, as it's checking the network, the link speed, it's this one now, because that packet is not located anywhere in any of my sites. It's getting directly from the distribution point. But you see, it always samples that link, and it does what I told you before. We were working with a fixed block, which was a 32K block, but now we do what we call dynamic blocking, so we can actually increase that. You can see how fast that's starting to come down. So I'm going to actually add some more delay and do a file copy. So I'll grab this file, and we can actually see the link. Oh, wow, that's not a big file, apparently. Let's try to grab a couple of files. And yeah, okay, skip this file. So as you, oh God, sometimes things are so fast you can't even see it. So you want, as things are added to the network, it dropped down, and then you see it jump back up 10-fold, because I think it was down to 50 KB per second. But it always ensures that we can see to any traffic that hits the network. And the great thing, I was doing a POC with Aramark, and the network team was watching on a sniffer, and I think during the transmission, the machine of the master actually got a Skype call. You immediately saw it drop down, while the Skype call was happening, and they were still transferring data in the back end. And the person was on a laptop, and she was going to a meeting, so she actually undocked her laptop, and it kicked over from, they kicked the link over from, because we're aware of that, from the hardwired to the wireless, and it kept going. And she didn't call, say, hey, my machine is running slow, or I just know there's something wrong, my Skype call had interruptions, because we all know how finicky Skype can be. No interruptions to Skype at all, because, like I said, we ensure that traffic gets through 100%, and we concede our traffic to make sure that there's no impact to the business. So that really covers Nomad as a foundation to what we call the Windows Servicing Suite. And just so you guys also know, I'll add this in here, F5. So you have your native config manager is here. This is all the features that we add to native config manager to make it more efficient, because that's really what 1E is all about. And our original founders, who actually were Microsoft consultants 20-plus years ago, built this product so that companies would no longer ever see the blue screen of death back in the old days. So that all these features are really where Config Manager, although it's a great solution, there's some areas where it falls short, and we actually fill those gaps. And that's where you see all these additional features that allow us to help Config Manager be more efficient, so organizations like yourself can run, I always like to say, fearless deployment of content. There's also an executive dashboard, so you can not only from your own, from running your sniffers and looking at your network side, we report that information back inside the console, inside the CM console. Well, you see here's how much content's been delivered via about 500 gig. 187 of that actually went over the WAN, and about 313 gig of that was actually WAN saving through a peer-to-peer, sharing. You see here, you can actually see what the overall bandwidth sharing was, what content is being shared via Nomad, client health, understanding the health of your clients out there, as well as, some of your download that's in progress, getting an understanding of what's downloading, what's coming from the peers, what's actually coming from the distribution points, etc. So I'm going to pause for a second because I know we have 7 minutes, and I'm going to pause for questions, and then if there's no questions, then I'll can talk about the next layer to this solution. Any question, guys? Anything on your mind? Does it bring up any thoughts? I mean, I heard before that you think this will be. It does look like it will be something that will help you guys out. It seems like something that will be useful for the network side. Anything else that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, yeah, from a network perspective, we think that that would be. It looks like a very interesting product. I don't know how this all fits into the overall Win10 framework and the project. I assume we were invited to this meeting to kind of get us to look at it and say, hey, this is pretty cool. So as far as I'm concerned, it does look like the might help us out there. Mike, you wanted to say something?
Chris,
no, I was going to say
so
from.
Go ahead,
Chris.
Steve. Oh, okay. So I was just going to say, from a program standpoint, the reason we're looking at it is because Mike Cap and I own deployment to production for all these different work streams associated with the Win 10 program. Primarily, one of those is Win 10 Office 365 push. It's going to go over the course of a year to the enterprise. And the Jerome tool, which is being stood up as we speak, is going to be our data warehousing tool to provide us candidacy readiness lists. And this tool also has a hook into Jerome, and the hope is that, right, we tie directly into that. And then this, the connection with SCCM, I don't know if it plugs into SCCM, lays on top of SCCM, but obviously there's going to be links to SCCM as well. So that's why I wanted, you know, Steve Paradise and networking to be involved in this discussion. And, you know, no decision has been made yet, but we're entertaining the idea, and I wanted to see if you guys had the same enthusiasm as we did. From a deployment standpoint for Win 10 Office 365 and the other work streams, it looks very exciting to me. So I wanted to bring you guys on board, and we'll continue the discussion amongst ourselves beyond this.
Yeah.
That's the background I can give.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a good approach for this. You know, Mike, did you want to chime in there, Mike Nealon?
No, I think I'm good. I was going to kind of reiterate what you said, but you know, it almost to me seems like this would be a replacement to SCCM. No, I don't know if that's the plan or not.
No, so I want to be clear. We augment SCCM, our config manager. We consider, in terms of content distribution, we're the plumbing. We are a alternate content provider. So in essence, the jump point from your I want to push this out is going to still happen through the config manager client. The config manager client then says, is there any registered alternate content provider? And that's where we come to play. And the config manager agent says to us, you go get the content, and that little bandwidth-friendly thing you do, you go get that content. We go get the content. We validate the content through our hash checking to make sure it's actually the right content. Then we turn it over back to the CM agent. The CM agent does its necessary content hash checking, and then it installs the software. So in that respect, we work directly in conjunction in augmenting config manager. We do not replace it.
Okay. All right.
Workflow outlined?
Oh, go ahead.
Is that workflow outlined, Jerome?
Yes. Yes, it sure is. I'll make sure I'll add that to that. I'll add that work stream to the documentation as well as with the network diagram.
And then one other thing, my thought is, okay, if we're all in agreement that this is something to pursue further, then at that point, I think we talk about involving our Jerome folks and maybe a Jerome representative and see how solid the hook is into Jerome and how all the pieces would plan to connect.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, I think that would be a great thing because we actually just did a project with Sanofi Aventis. Also, is actually currently deploying and implementing our Windows Servicing Suite and also utilizing Jerome. So what they're using there is they're doing the scheduling in Jerome, and then it kicks over to our shopping for the automation because we handle the back-end automation component and the expansions inside the task sequence. So they're using Jerome as the project management lead, scheduling through Jerome. Jerome kicks off our stuff for the automation, and then we return the status back to Jerome.
This is Mike Cap. That's exactly what we would want to do here as well.
Yep. Yeah, we've been in talks. I was actually just on the phone this week with the Jerome team, both international as well as local. Where, you know, once again, we work together on a couple of projects, and we're going to continue to do that. And they were aware of, you know, working with you guys. And like I said, we want to provide that same success of the integration, you know, with Jerome and our solution so that you guys get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I think the other history here was that Mark Marson, I think, was investigating this from a server consolidation vantage point as well. So, I mean, there was other interest early on around this thing outside of what we're talking about now.
Correct. And you know, Mark and I sat down. We worked on pricing that he found was, you know, good pricing. I thought he submitted budget. He told me he did. He submitted budget last fall. And then from that point, it was just attached to a larger project. So, yeah, a lot of the groundwork's been done. We've been working on it for just about a year now. Yep.
Yeah, and so that part of it.
I have to jump off, but thank you very much for inviting me and the team to this. This is very interesting, and I look forward to talking about some next steps.
Thanks. I'll follow up after the meeting.
Thank you.
I'll set up a follow-up with us internally at M&T.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, you bet.
Hey,
thanks, Jerome.
Jim?
Thanks, Cliff. I don't know if you have any closing comments.
Hey, Jim Graham. My staff. Hey, Steve Paradise joined quite a bit late. I was double booked and came in. Is this, can you provide this presentation or whatever you provided today so that I can look at it afterwards?
Sure. We recorded the session, so we're going to pass along the recording and the deck.
Okay, perfect.
And Steve, since you represent the config manager side, if you want to actually have further conversation around how you see how I have the task sequence in here, how we integrate into the task sequence and provide that automation through single task sequence steps and task sequence actions, we can actually have a follow-up, deeper dive into that if that's required.
Yeah, is Mike Bolo on that call by any chance? No. Okay.
No.
Mike who? I would. Let me, as part of the follow-up at the internal M&T side, I'd like to also get our automation guy involved and take a look at it.
Mike O'Malley?
Not this? No, Mike Bolo.
Mike Bolo. Sure.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, so this is Chris Freeman. I'm the PM for the work stream on this, and I'm going to schedule an internal follow-up for next week with Steve and yourself and me and Mike, and we can invite anybody else we want. We can, if we need additional breakouts with 1E folks here, we'll just say so, and I'll work with Cliff and set those up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You bet. Jerome, Cliff, any final thoughts?
No, I hope. Yeah, go ahead, Cliff. I'll let you close out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I heard on the call that there was some interest from Steve and Mike and Bob in maybe doing another POC just on Nomad, kind of like we did for Mike Green, Jerome. And, you know, that's certainly something, that's certainly something that we're very good at. And I think the one we did for Mike Green lasted, what, a day?
Yeah, it was like, we did it remotely. It was like a day or two at the most,
Yeah, so, you know, we're certainly available to do that. I know time is of the essence as we get closer and closer to the deadline. So, you know, we're more than available to help you with anything that you need to keep this thing moving.
Yeah, so regarding the POC, my thought is, since we're standing up Jerome right now and they're getting the data feeds built into that even as we speak, and at some point here in April, I think we break out into training for the tool. I'm going to talk with my program manager, and we're going to bring this forward along with, and if it makes sense to do this and purchase the tool and start using it, I think it makes sense then to involve Jerome team and plug into this and do a proof of concept with our own real data and see how this performs with Steve's team, with Steve Casper's team, or with the Jerome folks. If we can build a POC around that, that would be awesome.
No problem. Yeah, no, we would love to. Like Jerome mentioned, we worked with Sanofi and Jerome. We're still working with them. And Sanofi, I think, is 130,000 endpoints. Is that right, Jerome?
That's correct.
So, yeah, I mean, we can deliver a lot of value. I'm confident of that. We wouldn't still be in business if we couldn't. We've been at it over 20 years, and we've got a reference space as long as my arm of large financial institutions, as well as pharma and every other industry, U.S. government. So, like I said, we're excited to get some traction and get this thing moving quickly. I think we can provide a lot of value. And Chris, I really appreciate, your coaching and your sponsorship. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, well, it looks exciting to me. If we can get out of it what we're seeing in the productivity improvements for speed and distribution point reduction and that sort of thing, I think everybody could be excited about it. So I'll schedule something. We'll meet internally, and definitely get back to you next week, Keith.
I'm confident you will, Chris. You've been fantastic throughout this, and have a wonderful weekend. I hope the weather lightens up in Buffalo and Rochester. And
just so you know, I'm in Rochester. I think we got about 16 inches here. I had to make a laugh for my wife to get out earlier.
Wow. Well, don't let me keep you guys. You definitely want to get home.
That's nothing up there, Jerome. That's an inch an hour, right, or a little bit more?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was since 10 o'clock last night, 16 inches. So.
Wow. And how much you guys expecting for the total?
It looks like it's letting up now, but it was going right up until a little while ago.
We're done here in Buffalo. It's passed us by. I know the South Towns, they were 18 to 20 inches.
Wow.
Yeah, it looks like it's wrapped up here now.
What's the temperature? Is it very cold or not?
It's around 32.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, snow temperature. That's perfect snow temperature.
Yeah, it's very heavy. Heart attack.
Oh, God.
Heart attack.
Oh, no. Snowman.
Yep. Widowmaker.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Look back. Look forward to the deck and the recording. We'll pass that around, and we'll be talking next week, I'm sure.
I turned off the recording before all that nonsense. All right. Yep. All right. I'm going to set it up now and
have a good weekend.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, all.
Hey, Cliff, I'll call you.